Today, information about you, your finances, your health, and your family is at the tips of your fingers, especially if you carry one of these. Now, unfortunately, if you don't protect your data, that can be accessed by people with criminal intentions. According to an online privacy website, Google tracks about 40% of the world's online traffic. 83% of American users still use passwords that will get them hacked, and only 3% of Americans have an understanding of digital privacy laws. Today is National Data Privacy Day. It's a day to make sure that our information is safeguarded and protected. And here to tell me a little bit more is the expert on this topic. This is Steve Robinson. He is the National Cyber Insurance Practice Leader at Risk Placement Services. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you, James.
How can we tell if our personal information has been compromised?
Kind of some telltale signs of maybe some irregular activity would be, are you getting emails that you aren't typically used to getting and maybe at a higher rate, oftentimes from foreign countries? Also, text messages could be another way. Are you getting, because this is increasingly becoming a way for phishing scams to take place and getting through cell numbers, trying to get people to click on links to go places where they shouldn't so they can further collect more personal information on you. So I would say any unusual activity in those areas would be a pretty good sign that probably the information that you have that's personal to you has been compromised in some way.
What's one thing people might already be doing that's putting their personal information at risk?
I can give you a couple examples. Passwords is a big deal. In 2024, the most commonly used passwords in the U.S., believe it or not, were the word secret, the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a password, and the word password. So we can start by using a lot more complexity in the passwords that we choose in terms of using numbers and characters, uppercase, lowercase, at least 8 characters, and changing them fairly frequently. While that can be a pain, password apps can definitely help with that. And just making sure that the software updates on your home computers are up to date, that you're performing those regularly. And I would say, lastly, really educate family members, particularly elderly family members, because a lot of times they can be at higher risk because of maybe a higher trust factor and a lower familiarity with more technical things.
Now, let's say someone's information is leaked. What kind of steps should they take?
Yeah, if you suspect that your information's been compromised, there are a few things you can do. First would be to file a report with the FTC at identitytheft.gov. So that's a good resource to kind of get the ball rolling and find out about resources available to you to hopefully remedy that situation. If you've been a victim of social engineering fraud and perhaps you've willfully given money to someone who's fraudulently acquired it from you, there is a report that you can file at ic3.gov, and that's the FBI. And if you do that within 24 hours of suspecting that that's happened, the chances of getting the money back goes up exponentially. But then I would also say contacting credit bureaus, checking your financial accounts with banks and things like that. And again, getting back to passwords, immediately changing passwords, particularly for financial related and probably social media related websites as well.
You talked a little bit about passwords. Do you have any recommendations for types of passwords? Should it be, a mix of numbers and letters and capital letters and special characters? What do you recommend?
Increasingly popular have been phrases that are easy for you to remember, that are coupled with numbers and letters. And so a lot of times, as opposed to having a string of 24 characters that you'll never remember or that might be stored in a password app, having a routine changing out of different phrases that might be easier for you to remember, but more difficult for the bad guys to be able to figure out. And I would say always incorporate some combination, as you said, of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, letters, and special characters. But again, I think a lot of times combining them in a phrase can make them a little bit easier for you to remember.
Starting today, what are some changes that people can make to combat their data privacy?
So we've talked about passwords. We've talked about multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication, or MFA, or two-factor authentication as it's called, is among the best ways to prevent, particularly when you're trying to access information remotely, to prevent data and identity theft. Because what it does is it makes sure that the person that's making that request is who they say they are, by validating that it's not just a password that they can use, because as we know, that can be harvested from the dark web through data breaches. But when you have both the password and a unique identifier that's only able to be accessed through, let's say, the uniqueness of your cell phone, that increases the chances of that data remaining private tenfold, I would say. Also, again, in terms of securing your home networks is a good idea also. So the router that you get from your internet service provider comes out of the box with a password that's standard. Unfortunately, the threat actors know those passwords and they have lists of them. And that's the first place that they're going to try to start if they're trying to get access to your home network. So you want to make sure immediately upon setting that up that you are changing that password to be unique using some of the strategies that we talked about before. So again, password discipline, utilizing MFA, software updates regularly, using antivirus and spam filters at home, and also changing those those default passwords on routers are several good ways to make sure you're doing your best to protect your private information.
These are some great tips. Steve Robinson, thank you so much.